So just to start off, for those of you that do not know about Swish, I'm sure you've probably already looked at his LinkedIn. He is the founding partner of Ajax Capital. He was the head of marketing at Bordy.
Yep.
Multi-startup founder. He's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you started your first business venture at 14, I believe?
15.
15.
Yeah.
And throughout the years, you can also see on the poster, he has a book called The Young Entrepreneur. By the way, I'll mention it again. We're doing a giveaway at the end. We're giving 4 books away, signed copy by him. And he's a LinkedIn top voice. He's done multiple things. He's achieved multiple things. You were awarded with Canada's Entrepreneur of the Year, right? He was Bull 30 under 30, has achieved a lot. Do you want to share a few things about yourself from your perspective, how you got started, how you kind of made your way to where you are right now?
Sure, no, I appreciate it. I was born in Singapore. Anyone ever been to Singapore here? Two people, okay, 3, 4, okay, good. I'm glad because when I moved to Canada, it was funny. Whenever I told people I was from Singapore, they're like, "You're Chinese." I'm like, "No, I'm from Singapore." They're like, "It's in China." I'm like, no. It's not as bad as the American education system, but it's still pretty bad. But yeah, I grew up in Singapore. I moved to Calgary when I was 8, 9 years old. And in Calgary, I lived a very, normal middle class type childhood. Nothing fancy. I definitely wasn't particularly smart in school. I was okay in school. My brother was very, very smart in school, and he's now a prosecutor in Toronto. He's clerked at the Supreme Court, clerked at the Ontario Court of Appeal. He was like definitely the brains in the family. For me, I was more like the vibes. That's what my mom would say. Like, I'd bring life to the party. I would bring life to the, hey, Neer, how you doing? See? I'd bring life to the room, hopefully. But yeah, I went through junior high and I started playing a lot of sports. I played basketball. I played cricket in Calgary, which, cricket in Canada does exist. Very niche, but it does exist. Yeah. And eventually I fell in love with debate. So the reason I mentioned debate so many times is because debate is where I kind of found my voice. Yeah. For a long time, I was pretty maybe not afraid is the word, but just more uncomfortable with public speaking. I have a lisp. I have a hard time saying my S's and R's. So it kind of made me feel like a little bit trepidatious. That's a good word, but trepidatious when I put my hand up. And so I started getting into debate. And my brother, when I actually joined debate in grade 7, he was in grade 12. He won the world competition in Qatar.
Wow.
So I was like, fuck. And I was like, big standard, a lot of, big shoes to fill. Ended up doing debate. Wasn't actually bad at it. Again, I brought that same maybe charisma, quote unquote, to debate. A lot of debate is done in front of parent judges, and a lot of debaters are quite monotonous, where they come up and they think like they're President Obama, so they have a very boring way of speaking. No offense, but it's a very clear and concise way, but it's not particularly. There's not a lot of personality in it. Yeah. Versus I treated debate more like an improv or like a comedy show, where I would try to give information, but I would try to also make sure the judges had fun and I have fun. Yeah. And that got me decently far enough where I became part of the Canadian team. We went to 2 world competitions. Lost in grade 12 to Singapore in the grand final, which was very sad to lose to your own home country in Singapore on Singapore's 50th anniversary. So I think it was pretty biased. And then I ended up thinking I wanted to be a lawyer going into college. Wow. So the reason I mention all this, the business you're mentioning when I was 15 was part of Junior Achievement, right? I was part of a team. There's about 6, 7 other young people in Calgary who were building this company called Tracy's Pins. The CEO is Tracy. Okay. A little bit selfish to name the company after her. And then when I went into college, I didn't even think that much about entrepreneurship as a full-time job. I thought about being a lawyer. How many people here, by the way, had a different impression of what they wanted to do going into college than maybe what they're doing now? No one? Everyone's on that path? Okay, a couple people. A couple people will maybe do it next year. No, I'm kidding. it was a big realization that I had in my first year, where I realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. Not even because I didn't personally want to be it. It's like I looked at what my brother was doing in law school and just felt like I couldn't do that. Yeah. Like it just wasn't me. And so I had to figure out what I wanted to do. And in that pursuit, I then basically stumbled across entrepreneurship, and that's kind of what took me all the way here. Yeah. Where I never looked back after I dropped out of my second year of college. I just kept building. Even if I wasn't a founder, like I wasn't for the last 2 years, I was an employee, but I was still approaching my job with kind of that agency and that energy as a founder, which is I think what appealed to Parallel and Bordy when I joined them.
Okay, interesting. So a follow-up question. When you said your brother was the brains of the family, he became a lawyer, and you were kind of figuring out what you wanted to do. Did you, I know you said you ended up in entrepreneurship and you found your way there, but for for getting started in business, was it kind of an opportunity that you saw that you wanted to kind of go through with, or was it more of like a pressure thing that, hey, my brother's doing great, I see people around me doing great, should I also be doing something?
No, it wasn't pressure. I mean, my brother and I are like best friends, and my brother, I think growing up a lot of times, because my brother was like the brains in the family, quote unquote, but he's the best debater I've ever seen in my life. Like he is, you know, he's unbelievable. He's so good. He actually like, he's not maybe as like charismatic, but he is. There's a way of eviscerating your opponent in a verbal argument that he has mastered to like the nth degree. Like, I don't know how he does it, where you kind of feel like you're naked when you're in a debate with him, because you just feel ashamed to speak again. And you're like, well, how did he take my argument and make it like sound so stupid? And he's done that so many times, you know, and so I have like nothing but love for him, and he has so much support for me. And I think one of the things that he told me when I was in my first year of college is he's like, look, you don't have to do what I do. And it was kind of a cool thing he said, because when you look at my life, I went to the same primary school in Singapore as he did. I went to the same junior school in Calgary that he did. I went to the same high school. I debated. I played cricket like he did. I was almost following in his path, and he wanted me to go and be myself. And he knew that I was more creative than he was. He knew that I had other aspirations, even beyond law, that I wanted to eventually pursue. And he wanted me to explore more of that. So I don't think it was pressure. Obviously, there was a bit of the dropping out of school was a little bit of a tense time for my family. Immigrant family, you know, tough conversation when they're Indian especially. The good thing, which is like, you know, knock on wood, but not a knock on wood, but like good thing was my parents were actually going through a divorce. So there was like bigger fish to fry almost. I kind of like went under the radar while my mom and dad were going through it. And so I was able to do that, but I don't think there was pressure as much as just like, I wanted to pursue something in entrepreneurship. The initial idea that I worked on was called Dunk out of college. And that was, you know, started by my friend Elliot, who had built the account at DUNK at Dunk. And I became a co-founder to him when he moved to New York from Sweden. I moved to New York as well, spent a year there. We worked together, we lived together out of 110 Wall Street. It's the only residential building you can live in on Wall Street. It sounds cool, it's terrible. Very, very boring place. After 5 p.m., nothing happens. On the weekends, nothing happens. The only cool thing is that it was called a We Live. It's a co-living space that WeWork came out with. So when it launched, Gucci Mane performed in our mailroom. And so that was the claim to fame, I guess. That was so weird. So that was basically like maybe what pushed me into it, was curiosity, ended up obviously being in New York and building stuff out there.
Interesting. So the only reason I actually asked the whole pressure question was because I'm sure a lot of people here are either building something or thinking about building something or just getting started in entrepreneurship. And I think even in your book, you mentioned that Gen Z is one of the age groups that is going into entrepreneurship. More and more people are going into entrepreneurship. They are starting companies. So especially with social media now as well, they always feel the pressure of, oh my God, this person is doing this person is doing that. You know? Do you have any advice for everyone that is kind of just getting started into this entire
It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away at all, right? When you get older too, I mean, I'm at the age now where I see people who are, you know, getting engaged and they're married, or they have kids, or, you know, they're getting a home, or they have a car, or they're traveling or whatever, right? Like there's no shortage of insecurities. There's also no shortage of times where you'll go on social media and you'll be like, fuck this guy. Like, you know, how did this person become famous? Why is this person making that much money, or whatever? So I think number one is embracing it. It doesn't go away. Anybody who knows the secret to get behind insecurity is lying, because we all have an ego. Some of us have a bigger ego than others, but we all have an ego. And so I do think one of the things that helped me though is just being very singularly focused on my life in terms of what I want to do. This is perhaps one of the things of dropping out of school and also going a bit against the grain. You know, everybody expected me in my community, in my high school, all my teachers, they all expected me to be a lawyer, right? They're like, he's a debater, he's okay in school, but he'll figure it out. But he's gonna be a lawyer, just like his brother will. And for me, when I went against the grain for the first time, it felt weird. When I went against the grain another time to drop out of school, it felt weird. When I went and, you know, moved to New York as a broke college student, it felt weird, right? When I go and create a business in 2019 and I get my co-founder to drop out of Stanford and his parents are mad at me for getting him to drop out of school, that felt weird. When we move back to Toronto in 2019, it feels weird. When we go through and manage a team during the pandemic, it feels weird. Like, the amount of times you put yourself in a situation where that feels weird happens, it kind of makes you numb to it. And so why I kind of bring it back to this is like, when you go against the grain and you start to realize that there's certain things that you do because you deeply want to do them, you kind of don't care what other people do to some degree. You know what I mean? And at least it's a North Star to continue to navigate back to like, at least, you know, maybe other people have it better than me in certain situations. But I have something that I feel like in my heart I want to do and I like doing, and I just want to continue to do that.
That is amazing.
So
in order to do that, I completely understand where you're coming from and everything you're saying. But I think in order to do that, you need to have a very, very strong mindset as well.
Self-awareness, yes. Self-awareness. You need to, like, this is stuff that you don't figure out. I mean, I'm 28. If you ask me, like, what are you going to do at 35? I can't tell you the answer. Right? I mean, I've always told people who know me, like, you know, Niru will know this, Amir knows this. Like, I have told a lot of people that I want to run for office one day. I 100% will run for office at some point in Canada, right? It's why I'm here, by the way. I'm not moving to London. I'm not moving to New York. I'm not going anywhere. I want to be in Canada because I'm long in this country too, right? It's a weird way of putting it. But I'm excited about what Canada can be. I want to be a part of Canada in terms of giving back in a much deeper and hopefully bigger way. And so I put that stuff out there. And more importantly, like, I know myself and I've known that's what I want to do for the longest period of time. So I don't have a pressure of when I'll do it. I just like the fact that every single month, every year, especially when I reflect on what am I doing, where am I going in life, what do I eventually want to accomplish, some of this stuff never changes. And it's like, it's gotten to the point now where it hasn't changed. It might change, but it hasn't changed yet, where I feel like everything that I'm doing, I almost feel like it's aligned to what I want to do, but also I'm aligned to kind of what I want. Like most people in life don't know what they actually want. They don't ask themselves the deep, hard questions, right? They don't think about this stuff regularly, every month, every year. Maybe they'll think about it around January when New Year's resolutions come up, but then they'll forget it by February, right? So like this constant process of introspection, or at least thinking more and more, what do I deeply want? And answer the hardest questions and deal with them every single week or every month and set aside thoughtful time to do it. Most people don't do that. But that's at least what builds up my level of self-awareness that I have to be able to guide every action that I take professionally.
Interesting. So what drives you?
Oh man, so much, right? Just
do you want to go into it?
I mean, like so much. I think a lot like people here, right? People, what are the number one things that Gen Z, well, is everyone here Gen Z? Probably not. What is the next one now? Gen X, Y, Z? I don't know, what is it? What are we on? How many people here are in 20? No, 21? 20, okay. Anyone here above the age of 25? Fuck. Okay, good. All right, good. I believe they call us, what was the word? Chuds, I've heard is the new, I've been hearing about this lingo, man. I've been hearing about this lingo that younger people have been saying, and it's all very confusing. I recently learned about the streamer clavicular, and I've heard about this looks maxing thing, and I'm just like crying. It's honestly funny. I actually find it hilarious to some degree, the content. I forgot the question. Sorry. Oh, what do I want out of life? What drives me? Oh my God. Looks maxing. No, I'm kidding. What drives me? Oh, so I mean, yeah, like what I was going to say is most people will say impact, right? So that's typically the answer that people in Gen Z, younger people usually say, I want to make an impact with my work. For me, I think it's number one, I want to be personally able to say that I've built things that have benefited other people's lives, specifically with the projects that I take on. So with Surf, for example, when we built it, it was a browser extension that compensated people for their data. But I think what was novel beyond the compensation piece was the fact that we let people control what they do and don't share. We were a bit ahead on thinking about privacy in the sense of we thought people would be comfortable to share data if given the full transparency on what they were sharing and how they can manage that, right? So that was really cool because we had the social mission behind what was like obviously a for-profit business.
Of course.
With what I'm even doing right now, it's automations in a regulated, controlled industry that's stuck in the mud, very archaic, right? And we're building this out in stealth. It's the first time I've ever worked in a stealth environment. It sounds pretentious, but it's just because we're trying to test stuff out without going public, without letting people know what we're doing. But it's built around this purpose of efficiency. Give people who have been stuck in a legacy industry the tools they need to move 10 times, 15 times quicker to do their job better. And so any of the projects that I work on, it always comes down to hopefully helping the end customer do something that they weren't able to previously do. And I take a lot of inspiration from all the examples of where we benefited people to continue to fuel my energy to work harder. On the personal side, I care about 3 core issues. I mean, social inequality is one of them. And that is, by the way, a very wide gambit of issues, but I'm on the board for Covenant House Toronto, which helps youth homeless, right? So homelessness is huge as a problem, but a lot of people don't realize that there's so many people every year who become homeless that are between the ages of 20 to 35. Wow. Right? And a lot of the work that Covenant House is doing is not just a shelter. It's supposed to be a program where a lot of these young people can come through, they can develop the skills they need to be employable. And the goal for Covenant House isn't to keep them in the shelter, it's to get them out, right? We view our success as a shelter on how many people leave the shelter, right? How many people are able to graduate from the shelter and get a job, get independent housing, move on. Yeah. So I think that's one example of social inequality that I'm very passionate about. The second is I want to try as much as possible to create an environment and an arena for free speech. It's weird, when I say this now, people think I'm right-wing. I'm not. Free speech is a tenet of liberalism. For the longest time, the left used to talk about free speech, right? And now all of a sudden, it's become this thing that the right can embolden themselves with. And I'm not to say, by the way, that I'm right or left. Like, it's, up or down or whatever the fuck they call it. But I find that I have a set of guiding principles that don't fit into a party label. And I think most people, by the way, in Canada have that opinion, right? We are forced, we are conditioned to think about our views as liberal or conservative, red or blue, and hopefully not green, but I'm kidding. Green is great, right? I love the Green Party, by the way. I got to talk. That's my third social issue, by the way, which I'll get to in a second. But I think that most people in Canada, if you made them fill out a survey and told them to rank the core values, core things that they want parties to platform on, there would be, at the very end of that survey, the outcome would say you don't fit into one particular party 100%. Obviously, right? I would actually guarantee that most people would fit into the median of 40 to 60%, right? Where you would actually probably have some balance, equal balance across different parties. Obviously in Canada, we're more restricted. So it's probably between conservative, liberal, but who knows, right? Maybe NDP, maybe Green as well in there. So that's something that I think is super interesting, where the arena for free speech, in my opinion, should not be tapered to a political label of what party you support. It should be focused on the values that you have. What do you want to see the world as? And debates should occur on that basis. They shouldn't just be tagging people under you're a liberal, which equals you're stupid, which has now become internet debates, which is why I hate internet debates overall. And then the third thing is climate change, right? And so climate change, I was helping out a company about a year ago called Deep Sky. And I'm still very close to the team there. They're a carbon removal company. They raised about $150 million recently from the Breakthrough Fund to build about 1,000 carbon removal facilities across Canada. Wow. Right? It used to be spearheaded by Damien Steele. It's now spearheaded by Fred, who is the CEO of Hopper. And this is something I'm very passionate about because I think that most people don't actually realize how fucked we are on climate. And climate is not about temperature. It's about carbon concentration. It's the fact that right now, if you look in the world, we're at 430 ppm. Right? The last time as society we were at 500 ppm was 23 million years ago. There was palm trees in the Antarctica. The overall world was 5 degrees hotter. Why is ppm so relevant? It's because the frequency of natural disasters is based around carbon concentration. Carbon can last in the atmosphere for 300 to 1,000 years, but there's a delayed reaction. So all the wildfires, the hurricanes, the typhoons, everything we see in the world right now, especially for Canada, wildfires are quite prevalent, and they're becoming more prevalent each summer. All this stuff is a result of our ppm 25 to 30 years ago, which was not 425 ppm. Probably more around 380 to 390. So we haven't even felt the ramifications of 425 ppm yet. We will. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I can guarantee you it's not going to look pretty. And obviously the scary situation is the fact of what if we can't grow crops in certain areas that we were able to grow before? What if food insecurity becomes more and more of a problem? This is the silent creeping threat of climate change that people don't talk about, right? So that's what gets me super passionate about climate. It's not even just about talking about solutions. It's actually portraying the problem in the right way. And a lot of the research, by the way, that Deep Sky puts out is really novel and great for this.
I think that is amazing. The fact that you kind of broke everything down and you pointed out the biggest issues. I think that's amazing. And the fact that the impact you mentioned is what is driving you. I think that's amazing as well. So just wanted to kind of quickly explain, enjoy Karo Yaar, this statement. This entire statement that me and some of my friends have created is focused on enjoying the moment, living in the moment. Because a lot of the times we do kind of, start thinking about the past or start worrying about the future, and we kind of, destroy our little things, the little joys that we get. So I wanted to ask you as well, how do you, I guess, because you've kind of been building a lot of things and you've been working on a lot of things, is there something specific that you do to enjoy the moment? Or is it kind of go, 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 go?
I mean, it's a lot of go-go. Like, look, I'm building my business right now with Amir, who's here, and Amir's a Laurier student, and I've had so much fun working with him. It's because we just enjoy what we're doing. We enjoy building every day. We enjoy going to the office and working. It's challenging work. I learned so much from him, the way that he thinks about programming. It's a novel world, man. When you got me working on a website, it's a novel world. Things have progressed a lot, and the tools have become far more accessible to program and to be able to put products out in a far quicker way. And so it is go, 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 but I also think it's weird because I also have a cool balance in my life where I can do the go, 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 but I still carve out a bit of time for the non-negotiables in my life. Things like working out, like I have a marathon in Prague that I'm doing May 2nd to 3rd. A little bit behind on training over the last 2 weeks, but I was really training hard in February and March, especially at a high altitude gym in Toronto called Altitude. Interesting name. And then there's also the non-negotiables around food, right? And like making sure I eat my meals on time, making sure I actually have lunch, making sure I actually have dinner, because I've learned from my previous startup experience at Surf where I didn't take care of my body that well, right? I wasn't eating right, I wasn't sleeping right. I dealt with situations of a lot of high anxiety. And I don't want to live through that again. And it's not to say, by the way, that I'm cured of anxiety. Anxiety is something that I don't think you have a cure for. You just learn to live with it. You learn to accept it. You build up the confidence, though, that the next time you face it, whether it's at 2 a.m. at night or whether it's 6 p.m. on a walk, that you have the mental tools to be able to get over it. You're like, I know that I've been in this situation before. I know what to do. I feel more confident that I can address it. But I don't want to be in the situation where I am making that anxiety worse, where I am, not treating my body correctly and putting myself in a situation where, everything in life starts to look a little bit glim. I know I'm making it, maybe I'm portraying this as very dark. It wasn't too dark. It's just more like, I feel like when you're not treating yourself right, both food-wise, sleeping-wise, whatever it is, you aren't able to put out the type of energy that you need to in a startup. Especially with an early startup, you need to come to work almost super energized or else you're gonna burn out like this, right? Like the amount of stuff you're taking on every day within the first month or two of building a company, if you don't have that energy to be able to go in and be like, every single day I'm willing to work super hard because I know that at least I'm getting 7-6 hours of sleep, at least I'm eating on time. That stuff is a little bit underrated. And so maybe at the age of 20, 21, 22, whatever, you'll feel like, whatever, I can, a lot of you guys, I bet, have procrastinated on exams and binged Red Bull and ate a little bit of ramen maybe and being like, that's my meal for the day and that's fine. And trust me, I did it. But eventually this stuff catches up to you, right? As you get older, I think you start to realize like this sort of stuff does matter a lot more. And when you can figure out the balance earlier on in life, I think that's a bit of an advantage.
Interesting. Is there a specific, because obviously you've been through a lot of things, how do you kind of develop your mindset to the point where you have disciplined yourself well enough that, hey, these are my non-negotiables, this is what I need to do, and I need to go to work every single day, regardless of what happens. I need to sit down, figure it out, and keep moving. How do you build up to that?
It's just, if you are getting into entrepreneurship, how many people here are building a company, by the way, out of curiosity? Okay, most people, that's good, how many people are thinking about it? I would imagine some people, no one? Yeah. Okay, some people, okay. If you didn't put your hand up for either, I don't know why you're here. No, I'm kidding. I think it comes down to that competitive attitude, which, by the way, most people here probably have. Something that they're very competitive about, especially if you're willing to take the plunge into entrepreneurship. You probably feel like, I need to prove something, whether it's to yourself, to someone else, or to a field that you care a lot about. And so I do the same thing for my personal life as well, where, I mentioned the marathon thing. I have ran 1 half marathon in my life and 1 10K run. And that makes me feel entitled enough to run a full marathon, which, by the way, pray for me, because I saw this video of the fastest guy who ran a sub 2-hour marathon, Kipchoge.
Okay.
And he finished the Paris marathon earlier this year, and he was limping the next day. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, fuck, right? This guy trains every day and he's limping.
And he's limping, yeah.
And meanwhile, I have to come back on the next flight after my marathon because my brother is expecting a child that week. Okay. Unfortunate timing. I couldn't move my marathon and he couldn't move his baby, weirdly enough. So I need to come back and I'm terrified of boarding that flight. I might need wheelchair access or something, but yeah. Setting a competitive goal. So for me, it's this Japanese word that I know is kind of cringy, but misogi, right? Like you set yourself a challenge every year. For me, I always have one professional, one personal misogi. The professional misogi for this year was to come up with an idea and build a new business, which obviously I'm doing. The personal one was a marathon, right? And so after May, I don't know what I'm gonna do for the rest of the year. Might just create a new goal and try to go after it. Yeah. But I find that chase to being able to get your misogi done is enough fuel and energy that I need to work hard.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing? I think I saw recently on LinkedIn you left Bordy.
I left Bordy,
right?
yes.
So what is it that you're working on right now?
Yeah.
And where do you see that going?
Yeah, so I mean, we're keeping it a little bit hidden in the wraps right now, but we looked at a bunch of different spaces, Amir and I, and we found that there were a few industries that are very regulated, but specifically also their technology stack that the agents typically use within that field are very archaic. Stuff that looks like Internet Explorer days and, not even 2000s, really 90s, maybe 80s even technology. And so we felt like these were industries that were ripe for disruption. We felt like AI had also gotten to a point where we would be able to do certain monotonous tasks in a very predictable way that would hopefully shave off a ton of time for the people involved in the process. I think the key thing as well is that we were approaching this whole problem now with not the lens of let us come in as your AI solution that looks all crazy branded and has a bunch of lightning bolts or whatever on the landing page. We want to come with a solution that's branded to be very familiar. The name we picked is an homage of like a 90s, 2000s feel. The branding on the website, the language on the website has nothing to do with AI, because I think our philosophy is that cutting edge technology should be kind of hidden. Like you should give people the ability to use cutting edge technology without feeling like they're using cutting edge technology. Wow. Right? And ideally make something feel relatable and make it feel as if it's not a steep learning curve. Because if you make it feel like it is, then it's obviously intimidating to use, especially for people who are above the age of 40, 50, 60, which are very prominent in this industry that we're in. So that is candidly the stuff that I can share right now. I don't want to be that, again, pretentious douchebag that's like, I'm working in stealth, and it's like you're unemployed. But I swear we're going to share more information about it in hopefully 2-3 months. We are, this is new territory. We've never built something this mysterious before, but it's been fun because also keep in mind, there's no pressure to release, right? So I'm getting a lot of fun out of just focusing on product, focusing on testing. It's been so much fun because, people are like, well, when does quote unquote V1 come out? We're like, what do you mean? It could come out tomorrow and it could come out again a month from now and you don't care, right? Yeah. So I go back to that Airbnb story that Brian Chesky shared. It's like, I think they released V1 of Airbnb 4 times, right? Yeah, and his whole advice was just keep relaunching V1 because until you get it right, no one really cares, which I kind of agree with. You're a college student. Right? How do you approach thinking about your future? Do you look at it 5 years, 10 years down the road, you're mapping everything out, or are you thinking about it more just short term?
So very interesting story. My friends and I are also kind of building something where we're also moving towards a lot of, I guess, change. And we have planned things for the future, for the short term and long term. And we try to, we're like, okay, this is what we need to achieve in the long term, but let's take it one day at a time. Yep. And obviously things go wrong, things take time, but we've kind of simplified a lot of the things into the fact that, hey, if something goes wrong, it's okay. Let's sit for 15, 20 minutes. Let's figure it out. Yep. And I think we follow a very similar mentality of what you just shared right now. And going off of this, I just remembered my next question as well. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. you mentioned AI
Yep.
specifically.
Yep.
And like I mentioned, my friends and I were building, right? We obviously use AI. A lot of the people are now using AI. Is there, how do you kind of decipher, because with AI specifically, a lot of the tasks are, you can do them a lot faster at speed.
Yep.
So how do you figure out when you have done enough for the day or done enough for the week?
I do actually, this is a good question because even Amir and I coming over to, oh my God, Waterloo. I was like, where are we? Canada. We sailed on the voyage. No, I'm kidding. We came up with a list, right? So even for today, we're like, what do we want to get done? And actually, right before this, on the way back now, we're going to continue to do a little bit of work. And we're like, what do we want to get done by today? What do we want to even get done by the end of the week? Right? We go into a weekend, usually we try to balance chilling and also working a little bit. So we don't kind of come into Monday being like, whoa, what do we have to do? And so even for the weekends, we think, what do we want to get done this weekend? So I think having that list is really good because for me, even if I don't get through most of it, if I get through like the most important stuff on the list, I feel content. Right, I've gotten to this point where, like you said, there's no shortage of things to do. Right,
Yeah,
to-do lists
exactly.
are just bullshit.
Yeah.
To-do lists are like kind of just more like they never end. And if you actually keep a real to-do list in entrepreneurship, it's going to be the most useless list you produced, and probably the most anxiety-provoking list that you could have produced. So I find that a to-do list actually for each day makes far more sense than a to-do list overall.
Okay.
Right, and what I mean by that is you should be reprioritizing your to-do list every day. Right? Go and whatever you learned from that day, especially as an early stage startup, finish whatever you can high priority. Go at the end of the day and look at your to-do list for tomorrow. And obviously you carry over items, but maybe when you carry over those items, they don't go into the high priority bucket right away, right? Maybe they continue to stay into the lower priority buckets, but then something else you learn comes up and now that lower priority becomes a high priority. So for me, I just try to get like my highest priorities need to be done for the week. If that happens, I feel happy and content. If it doesn't happen, I question why and I move along, right?
Fair enough.
But I like being super, super strict on what a priority is. We talk about this a lot. There's the meat and there are the potatoes. And early on, I find that with startup founders, they focus too much on the potatoes, right? The fucking logo, the name of the company, right? Like Amir and I were on a call with a potential API partner that's like, okay, great. Like, I think we're down to integrate with you guys. Feel free to shoot us over your incorporation docs. We're like, literally 10 minutes after that call, we filed for incorporation, right? And then we submitted it, and we're like, please don't look at the registry to check the date of when we incorporated. But those are the potatoes, right? The meat is the concept. It's building out the MVP. It's getting it in the hands of people and getting feedback. That's the meat. And so for us, again, the priorities typically have to do with, are we actually concentrating on the meat this week, or are we still working on potatoes?
I love how you mentioned priorities as well, because I was recently watching like a YouTube video about focus. So a lot of the times, let's say we're working on something and we get a crazy idea and then we start working on something else and we get another idea and we start a third venture.
And context switching all over, right?
Basically, right? So the list of priorities, how do you, I guess, throughout all your ideas that you come up with, how do you pick the right one and go all in?
It's
Especially for these guys, they're all students as well, and they have to do school. They have a lot of other responsibilities. So how do you kind of pick one and go all in?
Well, I'll be frank, I'm probably not the worst person to answer this question, because in my early 20s, when I was your guys' age, I was all over the place, right? Like all this stuff in my bio, it looks very impressive now, I bet. Trust me, when I was doing it, it was really tough to manage everything. And candidly, I also think I suffered because of that. I could have gone all in on speaking at some point, but I decided to speak earlier in my life, right? Writing a book. I reread this book, I'm like, kind of no offense, there's some chapters, I'm like, that's moronic, right? And I'm 28, I wrote this book when I was 22, right? So obviously there's a little bit of context that maybe I've also developed now. I think personally speaking, the first 60 pages is the best, and then the remaining is, but I do think what's important about what I just said is, as I've gotten a bit older now, I have focused a lot more on what was important, and I have benefited from that dramatically. So even with the business I'm building right now with Amir, I'm all in on it. There's nothing else I'm doing, right? Like I was doing a podcast on F1, which I've really stepped back from quite a bit. I mean, we're doing virtual interviews, which is fine because I record them in my den, and from time to time over the weekends, I'll interview and do those. But we used to travel to Europe each year, and I couldn't do that this year. right? And Niru was part of that and helped out a lot there too. So, he also knows how much time and effort we put into that over the last few years. It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I can't do that while building a business from scratch again.
100%.
But the 20-year-old Swish might have said, yeah, fuck it, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm also going to write a book, and I'm also going to speak, and I'm going to do all this stuff. And then when I talk now about mental health, it kind of makes sense, right? I was burnt out, but I was also burning out because of the fact that I wasn't just focused on that one important thing.
Yeah.
So for me, I think focus is important. Now going back to your question, how do you know what to focus on? You don't, right? That is the challenge though.
Yeah.
The challenge I find is understanding what to focus on. And for me, trial and error is the most beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Try something, try it for even a couple weeks or a month. If it doesn't work, don't worry, move on, right?
Okay.
If you could even go through all 4 years of college, or if you could go through the early years of building a professional career and test out a bunch of things that don't work, you will still come out more educated than most people that never tried in the first place.
Interesting.
And every single attempt at building something is good education around how to move fast, how to think about meat versus potatoes, how to work with people. You're going to work with all sorts of people. You're going to manage different personalities. That will teach you something that you will be able to hopefully take into the next thing you do. So for me, it's trial and error. If you question, is this the idea? Is that the idea? You're going to run into doing what you said, which is you're working on 4 or 5 different things all at once. You're not putting all your eggs into one basket eventually to really give it the shot it needs to be successful.
Yeah.
And again, the downside, especially if you're a student, is quite low on, especially right now in the world we live in, spinning up an idea, spinning up a landing page, building out an MVP, testing an idea out has become easier than ever before. Yeah. I can engineer shit now. Like, it has gotten easier than ever before to put stuff out. The way we used to do tests back in the days, we used to run a Facebook ad. Okay. Right? We used to run a Facebook ad on an idea to see whether or not people would like it. If people were commenting, people were sharing it, people were liking it, then it's almost like that was our validation, right? It wasn't even building the product. It was testing the marketing to see whether or not there was a market demand for this sort of product.
Yeah.
You don't even have to do that anymore. You could actually put the product out entirely and see whether or not people are willing to download it, whether people are able to use it, whether people are giving you good feedback on it. Yeah. So this is really the phase of testing out a bunch of shit, but eventually once you get that signal that it works, going all in and giving it the chance that it deserves.
I think the fact that you mentioned everything about how quickly things can get done now.
Yep.
It is very, very true. So my next question is relating to that actually. So is it just you and Amir building?
Right now, and we have Jordan, who's our, pretty much our Claudebot COO.
Okay.
Our investors were quite shocked when he started sending investor updates out too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the 3 of us, and I like that you brought that up really quickly, is because that's actually a personal challenge that we have now. We're going to see if we can start, scale, and hopefully sell a company with under 5 people.
Wow.
So we're very, very much not going to be hiring people. If anything, we might just do more things ourselves, or hopefully leverage AI even more to be able to, customer support, marketing, do stuff like that.
And that was actually my question, because now it's easier than ever before, and you have a team of 3 people building, and you don't want to hire employees.
Yep.
Do you see in the future that a lot of the companies are going to be like 2 or 3 or 4 people companies?
Yeah.
And what type of team, I guess, even in those 3 or 4 people, would you like, or should you kind of get together to build whatever it is that you're building?
I mean, you do need one person, in my opinion, who is very, very technical.
Yeah.
It's always good to have another person who is willing to embrace that and hopefully get, a little bit in the weeds to at least support that individual. Yeah. But obviously the other person, it's great if they also have sales, marketing, operational background, maybe fundraising background as well that can help.
Okay.
That's usually the good kind of complement that you would have. But again, 2 engineers, by the way, together, that's a dream team too, right? I know Amir wants that. Like, right? There's probably so many times he's like, if Swish wasn't here and I had 2 more of me, I'd be able to move 30 times quicker, which you probably could. So there's no issue with that too. I think obviously sales and marketing in today's world, you can learn that, right? It's funny because people are always talking about how AI is becoming obviously so prevalent and programming has become a lot easier. But like some vibe coded apps still look like shit, and some of them also function terribly too. So I do think there's an art behind coding, and there's an art behind design that is probably not going to be lost, especially like human-centered design. Like I don't think that as a principle is taught in many schools, or many people even embrace it. So maybe experience, maybe if you could do something, it's to get really deep into understanding that and then building your team more around that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what sort of, I guess, goals do you have in the next, I want to say, 4 years, 5 years?
Don't know. Maybe this year, literally all I can tell you is this year, right? Spin the company up, come out of stealth, hopefully in 2 to 3 months, based on, we've already fundraised, but we're going to hopefully get more customer adoption. There's like 2 or 3 ideal customers that we want.
Yeah.
I think once we check off those boxes, we'll feel good to kind of share more publicly.
Yeah.
And then hopefully go from there. I want to do the marathon in May. Want to be a good uncle, hopefully, and not kill my nephew in the early days. And it's pretty much it, man. Again, everything around long-term dreams, still there. Not to say they're not there.
Of course.
But there's no timeline on them. And I actually like that. The mystery behind what I'm doing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I'd like to keep it a mystery. Makes things a little bit more fun.
I love it. Do you have any advice for everyone here today?
No, man. I mean, everyone here seems very locked in. Just, I think the biggest advice is don't take a lot of advice. I know it's a stupid thing to say, but each person has their own path, right? So you can watch all the TED Talks you want. You can come to keynotes. You can read books. Learned experience, there is no substitute for that, especially in entrepreneurship. So I can only give you answers from my experience. If I don't know the answer to something, or if, like I told you, I'm not the best person to answer something, I'll be honest, because your experiences might hopefully answer those questions for you. The one other thing I will say is, do not also pressure yourself to, by the way, like figure all this shit out in like 2 or 3 years. I think, maybe also when I was growing up, so many people around me wanted to be like the 21-year-old, 22-year-old Mark Zuckerberg right away. And I think it's important to maybe also hit like a little bit of a pause on that, right? Just do cool shit, do stuff that motivates you, hopefully with people as well that motivate you. If you can do that, you'll feel, by the way, very energized to just keep going, and hopefully good things will happen. But I don't think you should just tie artificial pressure to yourself. There's already so much pressure in the world. Why add even more to your mental conscious?
I agree. I agree. So we will open it up to questions. If you guys have any questions, feel free to raise up your hand and ask away. Yes. I'm here.
Oh no.
That's an easy one. Throughout your whole entrepreneurial career, what's been your number one challenge that you have to overcome?
People management. I think one thing that is not taught in entrepreneurship is management. One thing that's not taught in management is entrepreneurship. So all the people, by the way, who go and get an MBA, is anyone here getting an MBA? Okay, good, thank God. I can insult them. I find it really funny that they all come out thinking they can build businesses, when really what they're learning is a lot actually to do with organizational frameworks and how to build a business conceptually, and a lot actually about people skills. So you learn a lot when you're going through an MBA. Like, I have a really good friend right now who's doing her MBA in London, and a lot of what she's telling me is that she's actually learning to coexist and deal with different types of people. And she's working on so many different projects related to business with so many different types of people, and she has to manage all of that. And so that's really cool, because I think if you can manage people well, it's a skill that's underrated. Most entrepreneurs can be really good at that 0 to 1, but then they have a hard time once they start hiring people in terms of managing them. So that was the hardest part for me, especially going through COVID, by the way, where you now can't even meet the person. There were people on my team who I'd never met in person. They might be going through a tough time and I don't know it. I give them a bit of feedback. It can totally come off the wrong way over text, right? All of the stuff that you don't have to think about when you're working in person now comes into play. And so for me, I think it was very important to learn how to manage people, albeit in today's world now with AI, perhaps you don't need to manage people anymore. So fuck, why did I learn that? But no, obviously no. Like, at a certain scale, maybe you have to hire more people to sales. Maybe you got to hire certain roles that AI can't take on particularly well. So managing people was definitely the hardest thing, and probably something that, again, you can only learn through trial and error, through a lot of failure.
Any other questions? Yes.
Testing.
Yeah. Oh, you ruined the podcast.
My bad.
No, you're good.
Building off some of those questions, what are some of the qualities that you looked for in your early hires? You mentioned that you're about a team of 5 right now.
Two and one Claude bot.
Yeah. So if the maximum was 5 that you might potentially get up to, then what sort of things are you looking for to complement your skills?
Yes, it's a good question. So, I mean, obviously case by case basis, right? For our team, probably what we're going to eventually hire for will be engineering and sales. So engineering velocity, there'll be a particular list of things that, Amir, for example, will tell me that he needs help on. We will craft a JD accordingly, and we will look for deep technical expertise, right? The right type of qualifications. For sales, I actually think you can get away with it with not having the most technical qualifications, because I actually find that sales is a lot more about persistence than anything. Like, you want to test someone's character on, like, do they budge? Like, if I give them, like, if I literally tell somebody, like, you're wrong, do they, like, cave right away? Or are they willing to kind of fight back a bit and share their point of view respectfully with me? But I think obviously with engineering, it's like you either have it or you don't, like, to some degree, if you're looking for a very particular type of person. The other thing is curiosity. Like, does this person truly feel like they want to learn more? And I mean, every candidate always joins a startup saying, I can't wait to learn more. Very few have actually prepared specifically what they want to learn, right? Like, it's like coming into university being like, I can't wait to learn more without picking a fucking degree, right? It's like, it just is like such a blanket statement. So I like it when I ask that question, like, what can this company offer that hopefully you can take away something from? And if they can give me very specific answers to that, I know A, that they've researched the company, hopefully, and B, that they have thought about the type of experience they want and what skills they want imparted on them, which eventually can hopefully help me also build the right type of program to get them onto the right path to obtain those skills. And then the final question is actually more of a trick question, but for certain companies, I always like asking, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But specifically, have you ever thought about entrepreneurship, right? And so some people, when you ask them that question, will say, yeah, I actually have thought about building my own business. For something like what we're doing, it's probably a no-no, right? Like, we want you all in on what we're building. We don't necessarily, like, we want you to have entrepreneurial tendencies of, like, self-initiative, et cetera, but we don't want you thinking, like, I'm going to do this for 3 years and then I'm going to go and, work at Meta, or I'm going to go and build my own company. But for some other companies, by the way, they actually do applaud that, right? Like, where we were at with Bordy, Andrew, who's the CEO there, who built Clearco, he actually loves hiring entrepreneurs. He knows that an entrepreneur that he hires will eventually go leave to build their next thing, and he's totally fine with that. He looks for those traits. So that's another question I typically ask. For us, it's more a qualification on, like, whether or not this person sees us as a stepping stone, or whether they feel like they can do, quote unquote, their life's work at this company.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
I just have a follow-up question.
Yes.
Sorry, Adam. What are the top skills that everyone should be focusing on right now?
Networking is number one. Yes. I think this whole adage around your net worth is your network is so true. One of the only good things that I did in college was networking with my 2.4 GPA, by the way. I was adamant on putting content out. So I actually started writing on LinkedIn in 2015, which was hella cringy, by the way. And I got made fun of a lot by my friends who were like, why are you posting on LinkedIn? And I don't blame them, because at that time, LinkedIn was really just like, either you were looking for a job or you were promoting a pyramid scheme, and there was no real in between in terms of content variety. So for me to start sharing articles was a little bit weird, but I joined the campus editor program, which is still actually a thing, the LinkedIn campus editor program. They promote the hell out of you. They amplify your posts. They give you, like, free credits and all this stuff, cool meetups. And I wrote articles on successful entrepreneurs in Canada. Actually, our lead investor for the current project that Amir and I are working on was someone I interviewed when I was 18. And I interviewed him, wrote an entire article about him, stayed in touch with him afterwards. And, again, 10 years later, now he's our lead investor, and we work out of his office. I see him almost every day. That's, again, if I can't tell you why networking is important outside of that story, then I don't know what will convince you. But the way that I networked, by the way, was not coffee chats only. It was interviewing people, because I found that 99% of people love talking about themselves. Exhibit A, play to that very simple aspect of human nature, right? So instead of saying, can I, reach out and do coffee for an hour, just reach out and say, hey, can I interview you? And just go and create the podcast the next day after they say yes. Or go and write an article on LinkedIn, right? Nobody's going to ask you how many followers you have. Everybody typically in Canada especially loves exposure. They love the ability to share that they've been on a podcast or they've been in a publication and build a relationship from a point of view of giving value to the person and not just taking time away from them. So networking is number one. And by the way, one other quick thing on networking, the follow-ups are the most important thing. You can be very good at getting to someone. You can be very good at getting them on the phone. You can be very good at that initial dopamine rush of like, hey, we're buddies now. But a year from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now, do you stay in touch with them? Do you think about them when they don't even reach out to you? Do you congratulate them when they don't even have a press release to share out on LinkedIn? Those are the moments that actually count. Again, going back to Michael, like the investor that I interviewed 10 years ago, like I stayed in touch with him pretty much every 2-3 months, updating him about my life, trying to meet up for coffee, trying to obviously keep him in the loop on what I was doing, asking him if I could help him in any way, sending him cool opportunities or cool founders that I was meeting that he should talk to. That's how you build and cultivate relationships. And that, in my opinion, is even more important than the initial reach out. Wow. So that's number one. And then number two, in my opinion, another big skill, financial literacy, right? Like get yourself the best fucking accountant early on. There's some good ones, by the way. I can recommend Sigma Tax. Super affordable, by the way. Jason, who's at Sigma Tax, is an absolute beast. The reason I mention all of this is there is so much that I should have known when I built a business on how to save on tax, right? And so how you build a holdco, how you build, a company under that, you can, especially if you're a very small operation with no investors, you probably could pull a lot of your income directly through a consulting corporation where you're, doing and paying 13% tax, deferred, by the way, compared to your personal corporation. Hopefully the CRA doesn't see this video. And so I think there's a lot of benefit, by the way, to doing that. Again, also, I'm saying find a good accountant. I could also just say go on Claude, which, fuck, in today's world, you could do that too. But try to look at that because especially if you're serious about entrepreneurship, there's a lot of cool creative ways to also claim your home office, for example. Like if you're working and building out of your home, there's a lot of stuff you can look at that, maybe can help you once tax season comes around.
Perfect.
Yeah.
More questions? Yes, Adam.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Swish, for coming.
Yes.
So my name's Adam, and the question for you is when you're working with like an early stage startup, what sort of frameworks or things do you look for specifically when you're trying to create like a growth strategy, find an ICP, or like find that product market fit?
Yeah, the key thing is actually, so for growth strategies, one of the things I didn't like about working at Bordy is the technology was so relevant for so many different types of people, right? It's a networking app. Essentially, you go on, you talk to Bordy, he'll go and hopefully connect you to people that he knows that could be helpful. You could sell that product to a founder. You could sell that product to a corporate executive. You could sell that product to a recruiter. You could give it to a student. There's so many different types of personas. That might be a marketing dream for some people. For me, it's a nightmare because it means you're not focused enough to know everything you can about one type of person that you absolutely know needs this product. So now kind of as a parallel to what we're building, right? Amir and I are very focused on one segment within one category of the segment within one country, right? Like we are, very, very intentionally going after a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche because I want to become these people's best friends. I want to know everything about them. We got on a call earlier today with somebody from our ICP, and he gave me the single, probably the best compliment that we could have received, which is you guys started this about a month ago and you know so much about our space and what we're going through. That's what you want to hear if you're building an early stage company. So focus around ICP early on will be key. Not putting money into growth early on will be key because what should really sell your product is the product itself, right? Find the early ambassadors. I mean, it's what we're doing, right? We're talking to the early ambassadors, we're getting them bought in, and then we're trying to ask for intros. We're encouraging intros. And hopefully they're gonna be willing to set up those intros because they love the fact that they get to use your product and that you're responsive to their feedback. So every time they give you a piece of feedback, write it down, go back to them, tell them that you worked on it, tell them that you've looked into it. Even if you don't implement it, tell them why you didn't implement it or that you're thinking more about something else related to the idea. That is the level of growth that you need as an early stage startup.
Hi. When you're sort of working with a lot of idea stages, are there any good points or ways to identify sort of go no goes on whether to go in on something?
Yeah, it's a good. I don't know the answer to that. If I have to be honest, like because you could also like we could do the math on it, right? Let's just do what some people do, which I've by the way been at fault of also doing earlier this year, which is funny, is you'll take a bunch of your ideas and you'll go into ChatGPT, and you'll ask ChatGPT which of these ideas is the most lucrative, right? And ChatGPT will say, Swish, that is an excellent question. I am so happy that you asked me that question. And it will spit out a bunch of shit based on random calculations of market sentiment, overall market size, problem. I don't know how it weighs up, which problem is worse than another problem, but it'll do all of that and give you an answer. What I think is personally a better way to qualify your idea is, A, you really have to honestly ask yourself, are you excited by that idea, right? What Amir and I are building actually is in a very boring space. But I think the reason why we're excited about what we're building is because it's in such a boring space. Like we are learning something that most people under the age of 30 do not learn because the space is candidly filled with a bunch of old people. And a lot of the stuff that they have to do in their work is very, very archaic, but also very much like stuff that you don't expect young people to know how to do. So I find that to actually be super exciting. It like kind of sparks this level of curiosity that I've never had before because I feel like I'm obtaining stuff in terms of knowledge that most other people my age don't know anything about. And that's kind of cool. It's kind of exciting when I go to dinner and I bore them on shit that they probably shouldn't know a lot about. The second thing beyond, are you really interested in that idea, is to ask yourself the question, if somebody else did it, would you feel regret? And for me, I've never dealt too much with regret because I've also gone with my gut so many times by now. But I have had situations where I've had a little bit of difficulty making a decision. I do, in my opinion, I don't know if this is going to work for you, but this works for me. I kind of do what I call the flip the coin exercise, which is typically people, when they have to make a really hard decision in life, have already made up their decision in their mind. But what they need is external validation to tell them that they've made the right decision. That's actually why ChatGPT is so fucking addicting for so many people, right? It's almost like your therapist telling you like everything you've done is a blessing from God, right? It's like Stilgar from fucking Dune. It's like the Lisan al-Gaib type character, right? That's just like, this is the prophecy. This is the guide. This is exactly like it was written. And so I like to flip the coin exercise where you flip the coin, you tell, heads is this decision, tails is this decision. You flip the coin, you look at the result, and you immediately go to your first reaction. You'll immediately know. You'll look at it and be like, not as excited. Or you look at it being like, yeah, I knew it, great, let's go. Yeah. Like for a lot of the hard decisions in life, I find that exercise helps me so much. And so I think those are the two things it comes down to, right? Like you can find very, very lucrative businesses in the most unsexy industries. By the way, you can find very, very lucrative things to do generally in life. Right? But usually the ability to get to that end outcome comes down to your energy, your desire to continue to push things through, especially when things get tough. Which is why for me, the two answers I gave you are interpersonal. They have nothing to do with market analysis. They have nothing to do with the TAM. They have nothing to do with the problem. It comes down to your feelings, how you feel about that problem. How you feel about not doing it and then potentially waking up to see a TechCrunch article saying that these two SFU people have created the Uber for rabbits and you're like, fuck, I should have built the Uber for rabbits with AI, obviously. 2026, the fuck. So that's basically my answer to that. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool, yeah.
Next question?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, okay. So I'm building a startup, and something I realized is really difficult with hiring is trying to cultivate a really great culture because there's so many different personality types. There's so many people with different goals and ambitions.
Yep.
How do you build, like what's your step-by-step process to build and cultivate that culture and make sure everyone works together and gets along smoothly?
It's such a good question, man. So I think there's a few things. I think one, there's so many of the soft things that you can do. What I mean by that is, there's a lot that you can do around getting people bought in on a mission, right, at a very high level. Are they really excited about the world that you are trying to build? At the end of the day, when you think about what a startup is, it's a manifesto. The startup is a manifesto, and if the manifesto happens, the world transforms in some way, right? In X way. What you want from every employee is for them to feel like not living in that world where X happens is like the worst thing ever. Like, why would I not want to live in that world? And get people super bought in on that mission. So that's number one, right? And it's hard to do that. That's why hiring interviews are so weird. Like, if you've just met someone for the first time, it is going to be really hard for you to know whether or not they're bullshitting you, especially if they're using Cluely, by the way. Right? No, that's a dead startup, right? But I don't know why I'm taking shots unnecessarily at Cluely, but yeah, anyways. But I do think that it's really hard if you don't know someone to know if they're BSing you on whether or not they're bought in on the mission. So that's number one, but again, hard to gauge. Number two is, do you really, really get along with them as a human being? And you as the founder need to make that decision, because at the end of the day, you are trying to not necessarily look for the most diversity on your team. I think diversity on your team is a bit overrated. And what I mean by that is not to say you shouldn't hire a different type of ethnicity, a different gender, a different type of person altogether. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm trying to say is, don't just say, like, if diversity was that important, then arguably I should mandate you to go work with the absolute worst human being that you hate. But I don't do that, right? So what I mean is, there is diversity of thought, which is important, but there is also a shared value system that you should prioritize as a founder. And you can find that across ethnicity, across whether an immigrant or not, whether a woman or a man, you can find that across the board. The shared value system is important. So the questions that we go back to when you're hiring should hopefully also deal with their value system, meaning what do they like to do in their downtime, right? Where do they see themselves in a few years? Also questions like, are they really, really excited to go into work in an office, or do they like working in a hybrid setting? Or do they like working remotely? What are their pet peeves when they're getting managed by a manager? What do they not like? What do they really like their manager doing? These are the types of questions that will hopefully get you answers to feel like I can manage this individual. They'll fit very, very well into our team. They can fit our culture because maybe you're the type of founder that wants everybody in person, and you should have the right to be able to do that as the person who built the company. So that's what I mean by shared value system. And then number three, so beyond values and beyond having shared mission, is candidly the best way to build culture is find certain people on your team who are, for lack of a better word, the types of people who don't take themselves too seriously, and you kind of give them the second position of like the cultural integrator. What I mean by that is if you have a big enough team, like at Surf, we got up to about 37 people, there were at least 4 or 5 people on my team who I know when we went out for a company retreat or for a night out to go drink, have dinner, whatever, these were the very people to not talk about work, but to also go beyond the aisle and talk to the very people who are in a totally different team as them. These are the people to go beyond and just, they're willing to make a fool of themselves. They're willing to be the life of the party. They're willing to let people almost feel like I can be myself now because I'm not in an overly corporate setting. Try to over-optimize if you can for those people, but you don't want to necessarily find them too early if you're a small team. You do want to find them later on as you start to grow. Those are the 3 things. One last quick piece of feedback on culture: fire the bad eggs, fire them quickly. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you can give people chances. I don't think you shouldn't be giving people chances. But if you've given someone feedback once, if you have given them feedback again, and more importantly, beyond even just feedback, you have given them the solution on how they fix their problem. You have given them the support and the resources to fix that problem, and they still are not doing their job, or they're detrimenting other people's jobs, which is even worse. You got to get rid of that person early. No matter how much severance you have to pay, it's always worth to do it earlier rather than later. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so basically people who are like extremely and overtly passionate about the mission and about working with people on a human level is the people you want to hire.
Yeah, which is why I don't think that's a problem. Like, some people are like, well, you shouldn't like hire your family. I'm like, go hire a family if you want to. Like, why are we fine with people hiring their best friends and not hiring their family? So at the end of the day, like, hiring, anybody who says that hiring is like this formulaic science is bullshitting, right? It's the best hires on paper could have come out to be the worst people for culture. Because when you mix a bunch of people in a pot, you don't know what's going to happen sometimes, and that's fine. The question is, how do you go about integrating people, which is why I even mentioned the cultural integrators, quote unquote, those people that no matter what situation they're in, they will gel. They will just gel with people. There are some people who can gel in any environment you put them in. Those are really, really good people to hire as you start to grow. And then also, if you do start to see a couple of bad eggs here and there, instead of just being like, oh, it's not my problem, I don't want to be confrontational, I'll give them another chance, I'll give them another chance, I'll give them another chance. And they start to ruin the overall culture that you built and change the company that you're trying to build altogether. Get rid of them quicker. Get rid of them quicker, right? And do it quickly, because that also makes you look decisive as opposed to tiptoeing around these bad decisions.
Yeah. Hi Swish, it's really great to see you here. I've been trying to get a hold of you on LinkedIn, IG, everywhere. But yeah, finally we are here in person. And the question is, I might go here and there, but I'll keep it short. It's just that with your portfolio of investments, 20 companies, how much would be the percentage-wise, like 80-20 or something like that, would be AI and also tangible goods, like tangible products. So how much would be that diversification? What would be that like?
Man, this is gonna make me feel bad actually as an answer, but I feel like I haven't invested as much in AI as I probably should, because so many of the investments I actually made were pre like a lot of the AI boom. So like the most active years that I had was probably around 2023, 2024, around the time we sold Surf. And that was obviously like the infancy years of consumer AI, quote unquote. There are a few maybe physical, tangible experience companies that I'm super proud of. One of them is called Brasa Peruvian, which is like a Peruvian salad bowl company. Honestly, I just really liked their food. So I walked into their first location, which was on Queen Street, and I'm like, hey, like who's the founder here? And they're like, go talk to this guy. And he ended up starting 2 more locations in Toronto. Now they're in New York as well, which is great. And then Othership, which I know Othership in Toronto has become a bit of a cult. But it's like a sauna cold plunge place. And I actually credit it for reducing a lot of my social anxiety. Even though, by the way, I can't see when I go into a sauna, so it's super fucking awkward. There was one class I did at Othership, which was called Love and Kindness, where they make you sit in the sauna and you have to look to the person on your left for 1 minute straight in the eye. And I was seated beside this wonderful woman, and I think she might have thought that I was in love with her, but I actually just couldn't see anything at all. So it was, super, super awkward. But yeah, those are the two companies that I would say are like more on the tangible physical side. The rest are usually software companies or gaming, actually. Like even, this was a bad investment I made, but it was cool at the time, was FaZe Clan.
Yeah.
I don't know any gamers here if you guys know FaZe, but growing up, obviously loved watching a lot of FaZe videos and got to invest and then ended up not making any money off it, but yeah.
So is it going to be same for the next 5 years? Or so the reason I'm asking is because I have this love and hate relationship with AI.
Yes.
I love AI just to leverage it, but I'm currently raising funds.
Yes.
That to a pre-seed round.
Yeah.
But it's for an oral care brand, which is like toothpaste and mouth powder and everything.
Okay, interesting.
So somehow wherever I'm going for investors, it's all in the wave of AI, be it in Waterloo itself or everywhere, even US decision makers or Canadian.
Yep.
So are you going to somehow also, because you also said something about climate change, right?
Yeah.
So it's somehow it's contradict using data centers and AI and getting prompts and also going to make a company or invest in AI.
So that's true. However, carbon removal helps with that to some degree, right? Again, carbon removal is great for the companies that are emitting a lot. They can at least buy these credits and fund these companies that are removing carbon out of the atmosphere. Now, your point of view might be back to me, which is a correct point of view. Well, aren't you encouraging people emitting more? That is true.
Knowing the fact that you are debatable,
perhaps,
I don't want to get
totally,
into it.
Perhaps. But also keep in mind, like, I don't think climate is just solved through carbon removal alone. There's like a lot more to it. And I also don't think AI alone, by the way, is, I think India is actually a great example of this. I went to Delhi in December, I mean, oh my God, the pollution was bad, man. Like it was 491 on the weather network. I went there and my uncle, who was in the army, he retired a couple of years ago and now works for the Ministry of Social Economic something, whatever, I don't know. And there was social economic in the word, I swear. And he was like, you know what? They actually put water on the EKY machines. Yeah. Like the air quality index machines, they put water on it. So the actual air quality could have been around 700 plus, which is ridiculous. So the biggest issue India is having is not on the AI side. It's on the fact that cars and construction projects are polluting to the nth degree there, right? Especially cars, by the way. So they've ceased all operations around construction, but they haven't done it for cars. But yeah, going back to your question though, investments-wise, I think for this year, actually, I'm not going to write as many because I am super focused now back into founder mode. So I'm just putting a lot of my energy resources there. But I will say one thing, I'm a bit skeptical on defensible moats in AI. Very skeptical, right? In a world where I don't think product costs go down to zero, by the way, but I do think they significantly get reduced. I want to wait a little bit longer until I start to see what the defensible moat within AI companies are. For us, we're thinking about it more around the play of data, right? Which I know a lot of companies are doing. I work through a software. It starts to learn me. It starts to make me go even quicker based on what it knows about me. That's fine. Maybe regulated industries like we operate in are also technically defensible moats because it's hard to build in them. It's painful as fuck when you start building in that industry. But it is good that a competitor can't start tomorrow and go through all the licenses or all the compliance that we've had to think about. But I am yet to see anything past that. And I am curious to see what companies beyond the model companies, what AI companies can do to truly be defensible. So until I start to piece that together, and maybe conversations afterwards as well, maybe some of you guys have better thoughts than I do on that. Until I see that, I'm gonna probably be a bit more hesitant on putting money into AI companies.
Two more. We'll have two more questions.
Sure.
Yeah,
two more questions.
Right, so I'm a founder myself, and I've always believed in the philosophy of make it exist and make it better later,
Cool.
which is like iterative improvement. Yep. So my question is, how do you reconcile that philosophy with the requirement of customer obsession when you're a founder, but also the requirement for, say, for example, funding or VCs for your product to actually look good and function even better?
Yep.
How do you reconcile that mentality and that thought with that customer obsession and that iterative improvement that you have a responsibility to do as a founder?
Well, I think it's all pretty straight aligned, right? Every party that you just mentioned pretty much reconciles themselves because they're all aligned on one star. So what I mean by that, it's like Orion's belt, actually. Like what you literally highlighted there was VCs, customers, me, right? I want to put product out very quickly. Customers want to get product to provide feedback. VCs want to see customer adoption and feedback. Like, especially in Canada, by the way. Canada, because of the fact that we have less VC dollars here, obviously our investors tend to be quite risk averse, which is actually a good thing, by the way, in a world of AI, because it means that companies actually need real traction before they get funded, and they can't just raise off a deck or raise off an idea. And so customer adoption and customer feedback are typically the questions that you will hear from a Whitestar, Golden Ventures, Whitecap, like who else are the big Canadian players, Innovia, more late stage. Like all of these Canadian VCs will look for customer adoption and customer feedback, especially early on. Customers obviously might guide you, however, with their feedback. So I think the real thing to think about is how much of your company roadmap, for example, do you want to predicate on customer feedback versus on what you truly believe are the opportunities in that space? Because a lot of times you could go to a customer and they'll be like, I love this, but I would really pay for this if XYZ was out. You'll go and do it and they wouldn't pay. Or even if they do pay, the next 10 customers you speak to are like, why the fuck did you do that? I already use this tool called Giraffe Co, whatever it is. And they already do what you're trying to tell me to do. So what you really need to start thinking about is how much credence do I want to give to this customer, like piece of customer feedback versus what I intuitively know are the real opportunities in the space. And that's a balancing act. It's a balancing act, but it comes down to you also having to be 100% honest about what you know about the space. If you feel like you don't know much about the industry you're playing in, you're probably gonna lean more on customer feedback. But if you feel like you know perhaps even more than your customer on what is currently out there, the lay of the land, the other tools that you might be competing against. And you have highlighted the areas of opportunity in your mind that you are now gonna show them, not through a deck, not through verbal statements, but by actually building that as a feature in a product and releasing it, you're probably gonna go more with your intuition. I think it's a spectrum though, by the way. It doesn't just start at 50-50 and just stay static. It probably changes as you go through selling to customers and maybe even expanding beyond the initial set of customers that you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that
cool.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, I think last question for the night.
Hi, Swish. My name is David.
Nice to meet you.
I'm a second year BBA here at Laurier, and just from when I was coming here, I was talking to Nir, and he was saying how you guys went traveling in Europe, I think more specifically UK.
Yes.
And you guys were doing interviews and like working with F1 teams, stuff like that. I was wondering if you learned anything specifically from that experience that you take now into like building startups and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Nir told you this. I watched Vampire Diaries for the first time with him in England at an Airbnb that we were at because, I mean, last year was crazy. I just joined Parallel. I was working a lot, and we were doing the interviews. We'd come back after the interviews were done around 5, 6 p.m. UK time, so about, 1 p.m., 2 p.m. Eastern. I'd do a little bit of work, and then I'm exhausted, and so me and him would, sit down, we'd watch Vampire Diaries, and that was crazy. But again, not as a segue, the key thing that I learned was twofold. Number one, showing up matters. The type of guests that we got, by the way, were fucking insane, right? Like, we got 4 team principals out of a grid of 10 teams, well, 11 teams now, 10 teams, in my opinion, or as of last year. We got 5 F1 drivers. We interviewed certain people who weren't even in F1, who are now in F1, like Isaac Hadjar, who's at Red Bull. We did all of this, by the way, because we showed up. And what I mean by that is we didn't say, hey, let's book a virtual interview. Whenever it works for you, let me know. We said, hey, where are you going to be on this date? We'll come to where you are. We booked a flight. We booked the studio. We brought our camera equipment. We shot. We filmed. We did it there. We made it so easy for our guests to just say yes. And so the lesson I take away from that is, by the way, we started at 0 followers, right? Even now, it's not like we're there's bigger podcasts out there like Pit Stop and all of these guys. Right? We have, I think, tens of thousands of followers across YouTube and Instagram, but nothing crazy. Like, we still were able to bag guests because we were really good at showing up. And then the second thing I took away was networking, which is within F1, because there's only 10 teams and there's only a couple of handful of sponsors as well, like the usual suspects that sponsor a lot of these events, word can spread about you very quickly. So if you go and you are intentional about how you show up, meaning you come on time, they arrive, you get them to do something, you get them to sit down, you get them to leave on time, you maybe give them a parting gift, you shoot them a great follow-up email, you think about them 2 weeks later, you give them exactly what their team requested, you get stuff out on time, that professionalism is gonna start to spread to other teams and brands who are now gonna be like, yeah, we heard a great recommendation from James. We'd love to be able to work with you too. Do you mind doing something with us? So that is the cool thing, is showing up, making a really good impression, following up and networking. I don't come from the world of F1. I grew up in Singapore, which is why I loved F1 growing up. But I mean, we started this podcast 3-4 years ago, and we didn't know anybody in the sport. And even though now the podcast isn't a big priority for me anymore, it's still there. It's still something I do from time to time, but it's not my biggest priority. I still can say that I have so many good friends in Formula One who work in all different types of roles in F1, whether it's on the media side or whether it's within the teams or whether it's some of the drivers themselves. So I find that to be like the coolest fucking thing that I can say. And again, I didn't know anybody 3-4 years ago. So those are really the 2 main things I take away.
And how did you use these things that you learned into what you're doing in startups now? Like, how have you seen tangible benefits in just the importance of showing up?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll give you a tangible example. So one of our client, like one of our ambassadors of our product, right, early on, she's given us a ton of feedback. We spent this last weekend, going through her feedback and working on building a few things that she wanted, but then more importantly, we know that she works as part of a larger company, right? We could just say, hey, can you introduce us to the head of your company? No. We built her an entire landing page that's custom for that company. Because I want to go and ask her for the intro to the head of the company she works at, but I want to do it with my materials fully built out, right? I want to, similar how we showed up to that Track Limits interview, with everything fully prepared, with that first impression thought through. Wow, these guys are great. They have their shit together. That's the feeling that I want her to be able to say when she goes and makes that intro for me. And again, also just keeping them updated, man. Like, I don't understand how some people don't do this, but for me, it just comes second nature now, where if somebody likes what we're doing, I just keep them in my back pocket. And I might even to some degree like come off a little bit too excited, because now I found a friend in the industry who kind of understands what we're trying to do. I want to talk to you almost every day, right? obviously I'm sensitive to the fact that this person is busy, but I don't think for the last few weeks there's been a single week where we haven't talked to this individual at least once on the phone, right? So even just booking in 15 or 30 minutes in their calendar and asking them before we do that, by the way, hey, is it fine if we sync up again? We have a lot of cool stuff to show you. That has been something that we're diligently doing. But you just have to do that. I have a tracker. I wrote them all down, right? These are the early ambassadors. You've got to keep them close. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Cool, man.
Perfect. Unfortunately, Swish does have to go now, but thank you for coming. Thank you for all the questions, guys.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
And like we promised, we're doing a giveaway. We're giving 4 books, The Young Entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Potentially signed by you.
Yeah.